them or hate them. A lot of Walmart haters out there. They've been a client of mine on and off over a number of years. And I have to admit, for the first time in the last 7 or 8 years, I am proud to say I have Walmart as a client. They are still not a perfect company, but they have made incredible gains around going green. And I will tell you, yes, it's driven by personal commitment, but the real reason Walmart is going green is very simple. A, they know that the next generation Walmart customer will demand it of them. And second, they realize how much incredible business opportunity there is for them in doing this. In just this last 10 years alone, they have literally saved now upwards of $900 million in reducing their environmental footprint through energy efficiency. They're now systematically driving efficiency through their supply chain all over the world, probably having more impact, by the way, on the green economy than any other company in the world right now. But again, not just out of self-interest, they know not only is there a lot of money to be saved, but there's huge opportunity. DuPont's a great example. DuPont has a very simple mission, by the way, around carbon. They want to be zero impact within a decade. Literally zero impact. That's their goal. The goal is zero. And the interesting thing is DuPont, the chemical company, kind of saw the writing on the wall. Again, DuPont knows not only do they have to do this for the planet, but they know it's good business. For example, in the next 5 years alone, they have made a commitment to create 1,000 new viable products in business-to-business market that will meet the sustainability challenge of businesses and countries all over the world. In other words, they know there is huge money to be made in whatever country or company that solved this problem. And let me say, as a Canadian, I hope our country is at the forefront of creating new green technologies, because if we're not, someone else is going to create those technologies and those jobs are going to go somewhere else. They're not going to be here in Canada. And finally, as you know, lots of certifications starting to spring up from certified timber, which literally that certification caused Home Depot, the biggest buyer of wood products in the world, to say they would only buy certified wood. This is the tip of the iceberg. The bottom line is, in the future, no business that doesn't pay attention to this will be successful. And it's a potential market changer. How many of you know what this car is? Anybody? The Prius, right? Now the interesting thing is Toyota took a huge chance when they created the Prius in the 1990s. In fact, it was 8 years before they actually made any money on the Prius. And you might say, what a dumb bonehead idea. But here's what it did. At the time, they had kind of fallen into just kind of, same old, copycat cars. The Prius was their big chance on what they thought was a movement. But within 7 or 8 years, literally, they had the only car in the market where about 80% of the people who bought the car only looked at one car, the Prius. It now, by the way, catapulted them to be the largest auto manufacturer in the world. They passed General Motors, basically, because of the Prius line. So again, look where the puck is going. This is just the tip of the iceberg of where things are going to be going. But let me kind of start to talk about what this means for you. But let me give you one last quote. Gavin Neath, the Chief Sustainability Officer at Unilever, another green leader, he says, why are we doing this? Because we're preparing for a world that will be very different than the one that we live in now, where all the things we take for granted, food, water, and energy, will be scarcer and more expensive. And any business that doesn't get on board with this will be disadvantaged compared with their competitors. Not maybe, will be. Bottom line is, as Andrew Winston wrote a great book called The Big Pivot, a friend of mine, he said, we got to get ready for a scarcer, hotter, and more open world. Things are scarcer and more expensive, from food to energy. It's going to be a scarcer, hotter, and we're going to have to adjust to that. And finally, it's going to be more open, meaning any company that doesn't pay attention to this is potentially in trouble. But let me make this more personal, because remember I said to you, it's a challenge of our generation, but I think you're really important. So I want to talk about something I think relates to safety and sustainability. Two simple numbers, 100/0. I first learned about these numbers in 1998 when I went to visit a company in Columbus, Georgia, Synovus Bank, that had been named the best company to work for in America. When I got to the bank, I met Jimmy Blanchard, the CEO, gave me a badge, said, Take a look around our company, 58 consecutive quarters of double-digit profit growth in 1998 when they were named the best company to work for in America. My first morning at the bank, I'm running around, I see these two numbers on the wall wherever I go, 100/0. I have to admit, at first I thought I liked it. This is an honest bank. They put it right up there where the customers can see it. You give us 100% of your money, you're not getting anything in return. It's all ours. It's funny, my banking clients at Royal Bank do not laugh as loudly at that joke as their customers. I don't know why, but it's a great bank. But here's the interesting thing. It's obviously not it. So I asked a teller halfway through my first morning, what does the 100 stand for? She said, well, that's easy. She said, the 100 stands for 100% responsibility. You never say it's not your job. You never say I'd have been on time if it wasn't for the traffic. You never say I'd have made the deadline if it wasn't for the other department. You never say that's somebody else's job, not mine. 100% responsibility is up to each and every one of us to keep this company great. And the zero excuses for not giving great service, great quality in every single interaction. There's never an excuse not to give your absolute best. Now, I've used that number many times over the years in companies all over the world, but let me say, the first thing about safety or sustainability is it only works when every single person takes 100% responsibility, no excuses. It doesn't work until we basically say the mission is zero. Let me ask, how many of you in your organization have some equivalent of a mission to zero around safety? Some equivalent of zero fatalities, zero incidents, of course. You know, why would you want anybody to die? Right? And all of you know that it takes every person being 100% responsible. You know, it's the 2 a.m. test, as you know they talk about in safety, right? You're there at 2 a.m., you know, and all the managers and consultants are gone, and does that frontline person at 2 a.m. follow the procedures and policies? But I think that you guys in safety can teach us a lot about how we can solve sustainability by focusing on this idea of 100% responsibility, no excuses. Because you see, it turns out that one thing, sustainability and safety, and again, I see safety as nested as a part of this big conversation around sustainability, is in both cases, engagement and ownership are both driven by and driving. Give you an example. We know that in organizations in the top quartile in employee engagement have 62% fewer safety incidents than organizations in the bottom quartile in employee engagement. We also know that employees want to work in organizations that are safe organizations. So it is driven by engagement and it drives engagement. We know that people increasingly say they want to work for companies that they feel good about. In fact, about 75% of university graduates say that all things being equal, working for a company that I believe in their story and want to, believe they're doing good in the world will trump, all things being equal, other things of why I go and work there. And also we know that in organizations where there is empowerment and where people have a lot of engagement, they're more likely to be doing something about sustainability. So it's something actually that you share in common. So let's talk about how you can get involved. First of all, I love Robert Greenleaf, who founded the servant leadership movement. He said, nothing happens without a dream, and for something big to happen, there must be a big dream. So let's begin with what's the dream. Whether it's in an organization like Lockheed Martin that uses my 100 around safety and around a lot of other things, or a mission to zero at DuPont or Interface Carpet and a lot of companies all over the world, the goal has got to be a big shift from where we are now. And this is so important. If we just keep doing what we're doing now a little less, it won't solve the problem. Price Waterhouse and McKinsey have done some studies. How much does each business and each individual in the world have to reduce our carbon footprint per impact every year for the next 20 years if we're going to solve the climate change problem, as one example? Anyone want to guess? How much every year do we have to be more efficient than we were the year before? Every year for 20 years. 6 to 9% every single year. These literally, think about it, that means literally within a decade we've got to be 100% reduction on carbon footprint per moment. Some folks say even that will not be enough. The mission has got to be zero. Now let me begin to really hone in. How are you going to get involved? First of all, I want to challenge you to step up and be a hero. Some of you in this room may not think of yourself as a hero. You say, look, I'm an ordinary person just going about my life, in a position that I have in my organization. I want to challenge you to step up and be a hero. Let me tell you about one of my heroes. and then show you how a few people like you stepped up to make him a hero. This guy is Ray Anderson. Sadly, a lot of people know who Ray Anderson was. Ray Anderson ran the largest modular carpeting company in the world, Interface Carpeting. In 1994, a funny thing happened. Some of his employees started coming to him and saying, Ray, some of our customers are starting to ask about the sustainability of our carpets. They want to know how much we're recycling, what's our footprint, what happens to the chemicals that we do. We don't really have any metrics, we don't even measure that. As Ray Anderson said at the time, the only thing we cared about materials is was there enough of them, how much did they cost? So some employees started coming and saying, we're concerned about this. And they bugged him for literally months until finally they said, Ray, we want to set up a task force. So they set up a little task force. How are we going to move Interface to respond to these customers' concerned around sustainability? And they said, Ray, we'd like you to come and present to the little task force. Now, Ray Anderson admits he was 60 years old. He'd been the founder and CEO of now this publicly traded company. He said, I'd never really given a thought at all about sustainability. He said, when they asked me to go and do this, he said, I thought I better get smart. He said, and so the daughter of a friend of his gave him a book by Paul Hawken called The Economy of Commerce. The book had just come out 6 months before about the sustainability, where we were going, and what role business would have to play. Ray Anderson read this book given by a 20-year-old daughter of a friend to him because employees in his company had bugged him, and Ray Anderson was transformed. Not only did he speak to that task force, but he set a goal of creating not only the cleanest carpeting company in the world, but to clean up his supply chain. In the next 5 years, Ray Anderson and his company, not only did their stock, by the way, go up by 70% and their profitability go up by 80%, but they literally started making huge changes in one of the dirtiest industries in the world, reducing in many cases their footprint by upwards of 70 and 80%, and to this day continue to do that. But the interesting thing is, not only did they do that, but they gave away those technologies to their competitors because they said, we're doing this for the good of the planet, not just for the good of us. But here's the real point of the story. Ray Anderson stepped up to be a hero, but it didn't start with Ray Anderson. It started with normal people like you and I in his company who said, Ray, people are asking about this. Ray, I think we should do something about this. It started when a 20-year-old kid said, I read this book. I think your CEO friend, Dad, ought to read this book. And think about it for a minute, the way in which each one of us can just make simple choices to be a part of this challenge. I'll give you a great example for myself. I've spent almost all of my life by the ocean, lived on the East Coast of Nova Scotia, moved to British Columbia. So I spent a lot of time by the ocean. So I love the ocean, spent a lot of time on it. So 5 years ago when I read a cover story in Time magazine titled The Death of the Ocean, I'm stopped in my tracks. The bottom line, here's what the article said. Ocean looks like it's fine, ocean not fine at all. I told you the facts earlier, dead zones, fisheries, climate change, and ocean literally choking on garbage, mostly plastic that we throw into it. Literally in the Pacific Ocean, a permanent gyre of swirling plastic now bigger than the size of Texas. And in fact, in most square kilometers in the world now, more particles of broken down plastic than plankton in most of the ocean. And literally, the seafood you and I are eating, by the way, we're ingesting all of that plastic. But more importantly, perhaps, even in the most furthest places in the planet, like Midway Island, choking literally with plastic bags, plastic bottles, plastic straws. 1 million marine mammals die every year from choking on plastic. And of course, I'm floored when I read this article. I'm overwhelmed, but I ask myself, I wonder what I can do. And let me tell you, it is not good to get overwhelmed by the sustainability challenge. It doesn't help the planet. It doesn't help you. Instead, ask yourself, I wonder what I can do. So that's what I did. I just asked myself, I wonder what I can do. And the only thing I can think of is, well, I live by the ocean. The first thing I can do is when I'm by the ocean, when I'm near the ocean, if I see plastic garbage that might wind up in the ocean, I will pick it up. So I started doing that. Wherever I was, in town, out of town, I would do that. And I'll tell you a funny thing. When you decide to step up, something interesting happens. You create a ripple. True story, I was in Florida about 6 months after I started my mission to clean up the ocean wherever I was, and I'm actually on a beach in Florida about to give a keynote 3 hours later, but I want to lay in the sun for a while before my keynote. I go out ready to lay down, but sure enough there's plastic garbage all over the beach, plastic bottles, plastic cups, straws. So I do what I do, I start picking it up. And as I'm picking it up, there was a guy from Texas laying in his beach chair watching me, and I could see he was kind of puzzled because he was sitting there with a drink going. So finally he said, "Hey buddy, come here." He said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Time magazine, death of the ocean, plastic garbage. I'm just doing my part." He said, "You're crapping me." He said, "Do you know how many people there are in the world, buddy? 6.5 billion people. He said, "Do you know how many people are throwing garbage in the ocean right now while you're throwing it out?" He said, "You're not going to make any difference. Why don't you sit down and have a